Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this steamy Friday morning when our thoughts are certainly with all of the people of France following the horrific events that took place yesterday on their Bastille Independence Day. It's a reminder, I think, of the cost of terrorism and the kinds of threats that we face all around the world and that Colombia has particularly faced over these last 50 years. But that conflict is about to come to an end. The signing of the agreement on June 23rd concerning demobilization, concentration, disarmament marks a transcendent step in Colombia's peace talks. After more than half a century of war, and amidst a lot of skepticism that the FARC, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, were actually interested in signing a peace agreement, the FARC has agreed essentially to lay down its weapons and transform itself from a military into a political force. As difficult as it is to get to any peace agreement, and these talks have been going on since 2012, any student of peace processes or conflict resolution around the world knows that the real difficulties lie ahead. Peace accords are never panaceas for every problem that has afflicted a country, but rather open a new set of opportunities. These can be seized or squandered. The government of Colombia will have to fulfill vast commitments regarding rural development, transitional justice, the effective reintegration of demobilized combatants, and the transformation of illegal economies, including narco-trafficking, which many say have strengthened during this period of dialogue. This takes place in Colombia in a context of deep political polarization, with vigorous opposition to the peace agreements led by the former president, Alvaro Uribe, who many of you know, who has spoken here and who we have deep respect for, who has also been in Washington this week to make his case against the peace process. The U.S. government and other countries in the international community have been overwhelmingly supportive of the peace process of the government of President Juan Manuel Santos. And I think it's to be expected, even in the midst of the deep fractiousness of the political debate in our own country, that that support will continue. We are privileged to have with us today many distinguished civil servants from Colombia. Joining us is Ambassador Juan Carlos Pinzon, other members of his delegation and of the Honorable Rafael Pardo's delegation. And I welcome you, and I'm delighted and honored to have this opportunity to have this dialogue with you. Rafael Pardo is indeed, I think, one of Colombia's most distinguished civil servants. He currently serves, as you know, as Colombia's senior presidential advisor for the post-conflict, human rights, and security, and he is the perfect person for this job. He brings a wealth of experience to the position, having served from 1980 to 1990 as the government's peace advisor in charge of the negotiations that led to the successful demobilization and reincorporation of the M19 guerrilla movement. He served as Colombia's Minister of Defense in the early 1990s and was the first civilian to have this post, breaking a long tradition in Colombian politics in almost 4 decades. During his time as a senator of the Republic, he led the efforts in the Senate to transform and craft a justice and peace law governing paramilitary demobilization. Prior to this current position, he also served as President Santos's Minister of Labor, as a candidate for the presidency and for mayor of Bogota. Rafael, it is truly a pleasure to have you here. We're honored by your presence, and we look forward to your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. I want to present where we are at this moment in the peace process. And I'm going to use some presentation in order that you have exactly the moment in which we are now, and the road maps. We have 3 road maps to go to a peaceful country. The first you see. Okay. Oh, better. This is the peace negotiation schedule. There are 6 topics, 6 items agreed, or 5 of the 6 topics are already closed and agreed. The first one was a comprehensive agricultural development. The name in Spanish is desarrollo rural. The second one is political participation. Is related to how FARC is going to be involved in political activities after the demobilization, and how to expand the rights of the opposition movements and parties after the peace agreement. The third one, the name is the end of conflict, is the military agreement. It was signed the 23rd of June in Havana, Cuba, and established a timetable, a very detailed timetable of the demobilization, disarmament, and ceasefire of FARC. The fourth item is related to illegal drugs, and this item defines how FARC is going to play a role after the demobilization in the substitution of illegal crops into legal crops. The fifth one is the title is victims. It's the expansion of the law of victims that was issued by the Congress, by the Colombian Congress in 2012, and includes the creation of a special tribunal for judging the behaviors of the guerrilla members, of the military, and of the civilians vis-a-vis the conflict infractions. And the last item, the name is implementation, verification, and authentication. I don't know if the word in English is proper. Authentication means referendación. I mean, how the people would vote if they are in favor or against the peace process. The last item is under negotiation now in Havana. We hope, and is the idea, but we don't have exact date, that within perhaps the month of August, or within the next 30 days, all the agreement will be closed. I mean, we will have a peace agreement in the second half of August. Siguiente. No. We have 3 roadmaps. One is the roadmap related to legal and political activities related to the peace agreement. The second roadmap is related to what FARC is going to do and what FARC should do in order to demobilize. And the third roadmap is related to what the country is going to do after the peace agreement in the next 10 to 20 years. We are going to see the first roadmap. We expected that during the next 2 weeks, the Constitutional Court would rule in favor of the plebiscite, as the plebiscite have the legal is legal and is considered by the Constitutional Court as a legal procedure. Perhaps the decision of the Constitutional Court would take place next Monday, but within the next 2 weeks, the Constitutional Court is going to say that the plebiscite is legal. Then we will have the signing of the final agreement with FARC. It should be, as I have said, by the second, at last, I mean, the date is not precise, but the second half of August, so within the next 30 days, we will have the final agreement. When the final agreement is signed, will be signed, then the President Santos, should call for a plebiscite and should set the date for the plebiscite. The plebiscite or referendum, the name in Spanish is plebiscite, plebiscito, should occur 1 or 1.5 months after the peace agreement is signed. So the plebiscite should occur by the end of September, by the final days of September, perhaps the last Sunday of September. We vote only on Sundays, not on Tuesdays. We don't have Super Tuesday, but we have a Sunday election day. So perhaps we will have plebiscite on the last Sunday of September. After the plebiscite, the President of Colombia have special powers to issue laws in reference to implementation of the peace agreement. And the Colombian Congress could apply a fast-track procedure in order to implement some laws related to peace agreement. The powers of the president, the president have half year, 6 months, to issue decrees, and the fast-track procedure have 1 year period to be applied by the Congress. So we will have, after the plebiscite, if the yes wins, and we hope that the yes wins, yes to the peace agreement, the government have the tools in order to implement the peace agreements in legal terms. This, with this procedure, we will have a multi-year investment plan for peace included in a law. And this is a very important aspect, because the post-conflict and peace process should be sustained over a period of 10 to 20 years. It's not a 1 year issue to be solved, but a 20-year issue to have to work day by day and year by year, and we need a multi-year investment plan for peace. And this is going to be included in a law after the plebiscite. No. Yes. This is the second roadmap. It's related to the demobilization, disarmament, and ceasefire of FARC. It was agreed and signed on June 23rd, last June 23rd in Havana. And this is a very detailed timetable of how FARC should apply some agreements in order to disarm and demobilize. This process is going to be monitored and verified by a United Nations mission, which is composed by 240 members, mainly from South American countries, not countries with borders with Colombia, and is going to be the chairman of this mission is going to be an Argentinian general, General Perez. This mission have the role to verify the ceasefire, to verify the behavior of FARC in 23 camps in which all the members of FARC are going to be settled after the D-Day, and to verify that the disarmament procedures are okay, and the UN mission would receive the weapons of FARC, all the weapons of FARC. All the procedure of disarmament should end in the day 150 after the D-Day. The D-Day should be or the same day of the signing of the agreement, or a week or so after the signing of the agreement. So we will have the FARC without arms and without organization, completely demobilized, 6 months after the signing of the agreement. This is the second timetable we will have. The third is, what is the government doing for sustain the peace? The first this presentation shows what is we are doing. One is the peace agreement. The other is the plebiscite, and we have the first challenge we have to deal with is how to stabilize regions where FARC are located now as an armed group, and FARC are going to live in order to concentrate in 23 municipalities. FARC is located now in about 100 municipalities, and they are going to left these areas and concentrate in small camps in 22 municipalities. The government want a stabilization program for those regions in order that FARC, if FARC leaves this region, no other group, illegal group, took the place of FARC or enter into this region to do illegal activities. So we have a army and police plan, but we have a governmental plan. The name is Rapid Response Strategy, that lasted for 1.5 years, and is a concentration of efforts of the government of providing some infrastructure, maintenance of roads, strengthening of juntas comunales, improve the credit possibilities for the farmers in those 100 municipalities, but some of the programs have a different geographical scope and are broader than the 100 municipalities. This is the rapid response strategy. It would cost about 1.2 billion pesos. In dollars is $400 million, and is already funded. So this is the first goal, to stabilize the region where FARC is now, and FARC is going to left this region, and we want that this region do not enter into the presence of other illegal groups. The second and third steps are long-term steps. One is to implement the agreement, and the other one is to transform the rural area and the rural living conditions of the country. And this would take at least 20 years and cost a lot, would cost a lot. and it includes many aspects included in the peace agreement, but not only the peace agreement. There are other projects or programs that are beyond the peace agreement, and the purpose is to have to close the gap between the living standards of Colombians in the cities and the living standards of Colombians in the rural area. In the rural area of Colombia lives 10 million persons out of almost 50 million population that have Colombia. I mean, it's 20% of the population. And the living standards of the rural area are the lowest living standards, and the gap between a peasant and a person living in a city is enormous. So this post-conflict goal for Colombia is to reduce those gaps. The second goal is to integrate the country. The country have suffered for 50 years of conflict, and there are many regions that are not fully integrated into the, common development or progress of other part of the country. And the third goal is to reinforce and strengthening the local authorities and the rule of law in these areas. So we will have now a country divided by red areas and yellow areas and green areas, and we want a integrated country within a 20 years period. The rapid response strategy, the first one, the stabilization strategy, have in total 4 lines of actions, 26 lines of projects, and in total 1,200 projects placed all over almost 200 municipalities. You see the map is not very clear, but the areas show the intensivity of the actions in several municipalities. The most intensive activities that the government is doing now are in the areas where FARC is located. For example, one of the activities we are doing now is the refocusing the individual reparation program for victims of FARC in the 150 municipalities that FARC have a presence in the last 10 years. The total of individual reparations that are going to be implemented this year is 30,000 this year. 30,000 persons are going to be reparated, victims of FARC, in those municipalities. This is one of the programs we are going to implement this year, since this year till the end of next year. Siguiente. Anterior. This is the institutional framework for doing this. The president is is the head of state and is the coordinator of this plan. There is a interministerial coordination committee that is responsible for all the activities of post-conflict. This office, the name is High Council of the Post-Conflict, is a very long title, but and we have 3 at the bottom, 3 executing agencies or new created last year. In one is for rural development, the other one is for is a national land agency, and the third one is the agency for territorial renovation. Those three agencies should have the responsibility to execute almost all the activities of post-conflict, plus what the different ministries are going to do in this project. For example, the implementation of the agreements, of the peace agreement. Peace agreements are, a text. I don't know how many pages are now in the peace agreement. Perhaps a lot, 250, 250 pages. I don't know, but each line of the peace agreement is transformed into a project with goals, with a timetable, and with a budget. I mean, if the peace agreements say that we are going to improve the social security for the peasants in the rural area gradually, this is almost literally what is saying in the peace agreement. We transform this phrase into a project. How to improve the social security coverage of the peasant over a 15 to 20 years period. We have to improve a system of savings for having pensions for the workers, how many workers every year, and what is the cost of this project. Each line of the peace agreement is transformed into a project in order to have a precise idea, including the cost of the idea in the national budget. These activities of the peace agreement so far, and we have a moving estimate, have 130 different projects, and there are 25 national agencies responsible for the execution of this process. Well, this is more for Colombians. I mean, it includes the tools of the how to execute the plan. In the left, there are the components of the strategy, and in the right, the two mechanisms or tools that we are going to use for the implementation of the peace agreement. The first one in the right, in the upper side. You know, Colombia is a centralized country. I mean, it's not a federal country as any other countries of the same size. In a centralized country, the relation between the nation and the states or departamentos and the municipalities is being executed through the idea of a contract. The name is, in Spanish, is contrato plan. It comes from the example of the French contratos plan. It's a document in which there are very clear the responsibility of the nation, clear the responsibility of the departamento, and the responsibility of the municipality. And this is a sort of a contract with a multi-year timetable and with a very clear responsibilities in order to follow and monitor and verify that these responsibilities are fulfilled by the different levels of the government. This peace contract, the name is Contrato Plan, but for peace the name would be Contrato Paz. It's very original, the idea. Yeah. I'm sorry. uh, are going to take place in all the departamentos of the country. I mean, every departamento would have a contrato paz, and every municipality would have activities of the post-conflict along the 20 years period of the post-conflict. One example of why all the municipalities should have an activity of the post-conflict. One of the items agreed in the peace agreement is the modification of the system of registration of land property in the country. We have two different institutions that goes with two different consequences. We have a colonial system. It's not an exaggeration. It's truly a colonial system. One is the registration of property. The name is escritura, and describes in a literary way the borders and the content or the approximate surface of a property in a very beautiful literary expressions. This finca goes from the beautiful tree of eucalyptus to the big stone to the right, and then you go straight in a straight line to a creek. Just when the creek cross a beautiful bridge, I mean, the tree was born, the stone was, used for construction of a road, and the creek nobody knows where it is. So the person with this escritura, title of property, do not have a formal way to prove he is the owner of the land. And 65% of the rural properties, not properties because they are not property fully proved, but the 65% of the agricultural production units do not have a proper title for demonstration of the property of the land. So one of the projects is, the name is Catastro Multipropósito. And to do this project should go to every one of the rural properties and have a revision of the escritura, of the property title, confronted with the catastro, which is the map of the property, put it together and settle the differences, and put it in a system in which there are legal security for the owners of land. This process would take at least 6 to 7 years, and it would cost at least $1 billion. So it goes to every municipality. If the municipality is part of or was part of the conflict, it doesn't matter. I mean, we have to do this in all the country. And this is part of the transformation of the rural life, and it's very important, and it will go to all the municipalities in the country. Those activities will be included in the contratos plan, in the peace contracts. The municipality of Simacota, for example, should know that in 2022, Simacota would have the project of modification of the Catastro Multipropósito. And this is the idea that every municipality, with a lot of community participation, would know what is all the levels of the government are going to do in every place of the country. El siguiente. How to finance all this project is one of the questions that perhaps you are going to raise. The system of budget in Colombia have three different I mean, there are three different systems of budget. One is the national budget approved by the Congress. The national budget comes from taxpayers, from taxes, and from credit, external credits or internal credits. The other is the royalty system that comes from the revenues that the mining and oil companies pays to the government, but not to the national government, but to a system in which the departamentos and municipalities have the power to allocate and distribute this money. And the third is the Sistema General de Participaciones, I don't know the name in English, but is a percentage of the national recaudo, ¿cómo se dice, Juan Carlos? Collection, a percentage of the collection of the national taxes that goes automatically to the municipalities and departamentos in order to pay for education, health, and other activities. Those are the three systems of the budget. All the three systems of the budget are going to be part of the post-conflict finance. So we are not going to create a new tax. We are not going to modify the war tax into peace tax. I mean, the finance of the post-conflict are going to be from the sources of the national budget. International cooperation is very important for us, for this project. It will cover not less than 10%, between 10 and 12%, we consider. And the U.S. cooperation is the largest one in all the countries that would offer cooperation for the post-conflict. And we would like not only a governmental expansion of the governmental services of infrastructure, we want a very important role of the private sector in the post-conflict. And the private sector should expand the geography of the economic geography in which companies and private sector are now. We have at least we have 1,100 municipalities. In about 700 municipalities, the only employer, former employer, that hire people with labor contracts is the state. I mean, is the city council or the hospital or the education system, but there are not formal companies, private companies in the majority of the municipalities of the country. So we will, if we want to integrate the country, it's not only the expansion of the state, it's as well the modification of the geography of the private sector. And it's possible to do this with tax incentives. I mean, reduce the taxes for companies who locate or relocate activities or facilities or factories in special regions where there are no economic activities, or to reduce taxes if some companies hire people from special regions, or to include, we want to include the idea of pay taxes in kind. I mean, some companies that operate in many regions, particularly mm, um, related to extraction of mineral resources or oil, would prefer, instead of paying taxes, to build public public goods or roads or bridges, and get this money from the taxes they would pay. And this is a very important source of finance. We will apply those incentives, the tax incentives and the financial tools for the private sector. We're going to include this package into the presidential special powers after the plebiscite. We copied the idea of the pay taxes in kind from Peru. It's very important in Peru. Has been very important in the last 5 years. This idea. So this package is going to be included in the executive power special powers after the plebiscite. All this process will have a very robust system of transparency and monitoring mechanism. We want that every project should have a mirror in which the community would know what is happening with the money, what is happening with the execution of the project, and we are trying to be advised by relevant transparency organization for doing this. I mean, to avoid, if it's possible, corruption in all the process is very, very important for the Colombian government. That is the idea of where we are in the peace process now. Eso es todo.
Nobody said this was going to be easy. We have some time.
Nobody said that we don't have a plan.
That's right, and no one said you don't have a plan in the perfect Colombian tradition, right? And that's a compliment. We have about a half an hour for questions. What we'd like to do is ask you to wait for the mic. Thank you to Sofia Oliveros, to Karina Peña of our staff, for all of their help in putting this together. There are others undoubtedly that I'm not recognizing. I apologize. I can't really see. Please wait for the microphone and identify yourself by name and institution, and we'll take a couple of questions and then come back to Rafael and go for another round. I see this gentleman, this woman, and that person all the way in the back.
We identify ourselves?
Yes, please.
I'm Alexander Kravitz. I'm a former diplomat. I served in Colombia some years ago now, but this has been an impressive presentation. Given your Harvard connection, I couldn't help thinking that in 2, 3, 4 years, there'll probably be a Harvard case study about the implementation of the peace agreement. I have a lot of questions, but in the interest of time, Brexit is a very fresh memory. It's a very fresh issue. What would happen if the plebiscite fails? We had and that's one question. The other one, as a Salvadoran, I was thinking just on Wednesday, our constitutional court ruled that the amnesty law, gracias. The amnesty law was unconstitutional, the 1993 law, and so it made me think when I was coming to this morning, I was thinking, could you think of something like that possibly happening, 3, 4
Which
years
one?
in Colombia.
Which one of the
The
of the
tran-
questions?
Transitional justice
I
mechanisms, I
mean,
think, basically.
If the plebiscite is,
The
One
not-
is the
plebiscite is one
plebiscite
question.
and the
if
other
the
is,
Constitutional
if-
Court is going to
Wha-
say something in the future different one with
no,
was
I
agreed.
think the first question is what would happen
If the plebiscite,
if the plebiscite
yeah.
fails, and then the second question is
Is-
looking at what's happened now some 30 years after the 30 years? No, not
25.
25
25,
years after
25.
the amnesty law was passed in El Salvador. Just now, their Supreme Court has declared it unconstitutional. Do you fear something like that happening in Colombia with respect to the transitional justice mechanisms, if I can paraphrase?
Thank you.
Good. Okay, we had this person in the middle here.
Thank you. Is it okay if I ask in Spanish or?
manage.
He can
Better.
manage. The question is the rest of the audience. I'll translate briefly. So yeah, go ahead.
Mi nombre es Mariana, estoy con la Organización de Estados Americanos, también soy colombiana y primero muchas gracias por venir, de verdad muy interesante y me gustó harto informarme al respecto. Mi pregunta es más sobre el plebiscito también porque me parece que hasta ahora no ha habido mucha información sobre lo que va a ocurrir en el proceso de paz y mi pregunta sería más cómo se pretende informar a la gente dentro y fuera de Colombia y al mismo tiempo si se va a permitir hacer campaña por el lado del sí y del no y qué va a ocurrir con eso, cómo va a ser la trayectoria hacia el plebiscito. Eso, muchas gracias.
Okay, I'll translate that briefly. Colleague from the OAS, who's also Colombian, with another question about the plebiscite. There's not a lot of information on the peace accords in general, and how are you going to inform people inside and outside Colombia about the aspects of the peace accord? Yeah, más o menos. Okay. Al fin, here in the back, yes. Sophia, all the way in the back there.
Hello, thank you again for this great talk. I'm Gabrielle Kelleher. I'm currently at International Republican Institute with their Latin American Caribbean office. And my question was more talking about what is the involvement of different civil society groups with the peace process, particularly looking at indigenous populations and Afro-Colombian groups.
Muy bien, por favor.
First of all, the plebiscite. Colombia do not have a long history on plebiscites. We had a referendum in 2003, and under President Uribe, and this referendum, the voting for this referendum doesn't reach the threshold for being applied. In 1957, we had a plebiscite in order to approve or not or disapprove the agreements of the end of the conflict between liberals and conservatives. And this was a very important plebiscite, and it created a new system, political system. The name was Frente Nacional, and was, successful in terms of the plebiscite, close a conflict and open up a new political life in Colombia. This plebiscite is going to be ruled by the Constitutional Court within the next 2 weeks. We don't have the legality so far of the plebiscite, but we hope all the process, the congressional process was proper and okay, and shouldn't be problems with the ruling of the legality of the plebiscite in the court. When the court would say the plebiscite is okay, there is the start day of the campaign. In Colombia, the public officers, we have some restrictions to participate in politics. I mean, it's not the topic of this panel, but the public officers only would say the preference if they would vote yes or no to the plebiscite. The question of the plebiscite is going to be one, and is in reference to the peace agreement. If the question has not been written now, but the idea is if the person is if the person agree or not with the peace agreement, not a detailed referendum as it happened in Guatemala perhaps 10 years ago. It was very detailed if you agree with it. Topic 1, topic 2, no. There is one question if that person would be in favor or against the peace agreement. The polls now show that the yes would have between 3 times and 2 times more than the no answer. I mean, there are now, according to the polls, more people in favor of saying yes to the plebiscite than say no. We hope, I'm a civil servant, so I can express my opinion. We hope that the yes would be the outcome of the plebiscite. If the no wins, there is no peace agreement. I mean, the situation of the government with FARC is the same as we have now. I mean, there is a conflict, and there is none of the pieces of the peace agreement that will be put in execution, because all the peace agreement close with the plebiscite, with the vote of the people. The special powers of the president, all the presentation, my presentation goes to the trash, yeah. And 4 years of negotiation goes to the trash. I mean, this is the situation with the plebiscite. After the court would say okay to the plebiscite, the government have the possibility and is going to use this possibility to publicize not the yes or no vote, but what is the content of the agreements. What, a sort of ¿cómo se dice? Divulgación.
Publicity.
No,
Divulgación.
well, it's not publicity in favor or against the vote, but publicity in terms of what the agreements, what is the content of the agreements and what the agreements included, and I mean, the government have this possibility according to the law. I mean, but not the government is not allowed to use money or public resources in favor of the voting to promote the vote of in the yes orientation for the people. So it's not easy to understand. The government cannot use money for promoting the vote, but the government have the or should use the possibility according to the law to do publicity with to inform and the other question is how the indigenous, or I mean, is the community participation in the agreements. All the peace agreements and all the post-conflict do not modify the constitution or the law in terms of the rights of the indigenous or ethnic communities. I mean, there is a ¿cómo se dice consulta previa? Previous
Prior consultation.
prior consultation is still occurs in all the cases where the law considers, and there is in all the post-conflict projects, we will have a much more open system of participation of the people in the information or decisions of the projects. So, for the rights of the indigenous communities, there is no change in terms of the respect of the laws or the treaties or the agreements they have in these cases. But all the process of post-conflict will have a more robust system of community participation.
And then there was a question also about an overturning of the amnesty law, but maybe we can come back to that.
Yeah,
you wanna,
I don't have the answer. I hope no, but I don't have the answer, and you don't have the answer. So.
right. It's a theoretical possibility. There are a lot of hands here. Let's take this gentleman here, Hector Morales in the middle, this person over on the side.
Thank you. My name is Camilo Pardo. I am Colombian. I am a researcher and a doctoral student at George Mason University. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Pardo. I
We're
would
not
like.
relatives.
Oh no, we're not.
Okay.
No.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right. Could you dwell a little bit more in detail about the role that local governments will play in the implementation of the peace agreements?
Hector, in the middle here.
Thank you, Cindy. Minister Pardo, I'm Hector Morales. I am working with a infrastructure investor developing a hydroelectric project in Chocó. My question is about financing and specifically the role and relationship of the program of Todos Somos Pacíficos with the multi-year plan that you've identified and how those two are going to work together. Thank you.
Okay, and I had someone over here on the side.
Hi, my name is Andres Izquierdo. I'm an international intellectual property attorney. Of course, my question is going to be related to intellectual property. So, given the need to unify the country, education will be an important part of the implementation process. Having in mind the strict rules of intellectual property, copyright, and related rights for educational materials, as well for the high costs of books and technology, my question is, have you considered a budget for this? And the second is, have you considered on creating an exception to the intellectual property rules, at least for rural areas, on creating compulsory licenses for copyrighted materials?
That's an unusual question, but we will turn it back to Rafael. Starting here.
Okay, local authorities. The mechanism or tool of contrato plan includes the local authority, I mean the governor or the mayor, as the key actors of the negotiation of the contrato plan. So the mayors and the governors have a very specific role in all the design and the architecture of the contrato plan. Of course, the mayor have the responsibility or should have the responsibility to include a system of community participation. I mean, it's not only the mayor in a closed office who is going to be define the project, but the mayor is or will be the leader of a process of a community participation. So the mayors have responsibility in this process, in the design of the plan, and in some cases in the execution of the project. But the execution depends on what project is, we will see project by project in terms of who is going to be responsible of the execution. The second question is related
About the relationship between the program Todos Somos Pacíficos and the other budgetary.
we have here the person who knows better the programs Todos Somos Pacífico, which is Oscar Gamboa. I don't know if Oscar want to say something about it.
Oscar, preséntate, por favor.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Oscar Gamboa. I'm from Buenaventura, the Pacific Coast. I'm advisor of Minister Pardo. Regarding the Todos Somos Pacífico strategic, I guess this is in the right moment because it's going to push and complement the implementation of the strategies that Minister Pardo had described here. The challenge is to run quickly with Todos Somos Pacífico because particularly in the Pacific Coast, the internal armed conflict in Colombia became worse, the social situation. So I guess this is a good opportunity for this plan Todos Somos Pacíficos because it's going to complement in the right moment of the history. Okay, thank you.
The last question, property rights.
Intellectual property.
Intellectual property rights. I mean, it's a new question for me, but we don't consider to modify the laws of intellectual property rights for this project.
It's more like an exception to the law, like something that happened recently with the Ministry of Health, where they created a compulsory license. I mean, not a compulsory license, a public interest. Where they created a public interest declaration on a drug that was recently happened in the Ministry of Health some weeks ago.
Yeah.
That's a compulsory license, and that will apply for the time being that it's going to be necessary for the country. If you create, given the need of education, maybe an exception to the rule that could just keep could last for 10 years or 20 years, that's going to be the implementation of the process for the most sensitive areas of the country.
This is your idea, not my idea.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't have I don't have an answer. It's the first time I have heard of this, and I take into account this topic.
Perhaps the Ministry of Education might consider something like that. Okay, let's take this person all the way in the back, this person, and this young man. Okay. Please don't forget to identify yourselves.
Maciel Sepulveda. I'm working on the Colombia Regional Governance Activity with Management Systems International. You mentioned the need for more private participation in terms of financing. Can you just talk a bit more about what you're doing to incentivize that and sort of what you hope to see from the private sector?
Okay.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sam Rotenberg. I'm with the Department of State. Thank you, Mr. Pardo, for coming here and talking to us about this. My question is specifically about also the budget and thinking about the demobilization of the FARC as well as large parts of the military, I would imagine. Do you expect that would help provide the budget surplus that you would use for these programs, or do you think the majority of the funding would come from new taxes from these areas that obviously aren't paying taxes right now?
The peace dividend. There was someone over here. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Nicolas Velasquez. I'm working with the Paris Center for Hemispheric Defense Studies with the Department of Defense. And I know you are not the Ministry of Defense, but you're in the Ministry of Post-Conflict. And my question is, what will be the role of the armed forces in this post-conflict process or situation of the peace agreement?
Okay, three very good questions. The role of the private sector, the role of the armed forces, and also whether there will be a peace dividend and whether you'll have new money to raise or whether some budget reallocations can be made.
Yeah, in reference to the private sector, the strategy and the goal we have in the post-conflict is to modify the economic geography of the country, and this includes not only the state activities or the governmental activities, but mainly the geography of the private sector. We have a high informality in the rural areas, and in order to have more formalization of the rural areas, we have to formalize first the land property, and then to include the possibility that large and mid and small size companies would operate in areas that what they are not operating now because of the conflict or because of economic considerations. The tools or mechanism to do this are going to be there is no new in some part of the world. There are tax reductions or tax exemptions for locating activities in certain areas. Other are a reduction of taxes related to a higher persons from specific areas. One of the cases I have in mind is one example of this policy that I have promoted when I was Minister of Labor 3 years ago. A big company, a telecommunication company, and I say the name Telefonica, have a plan to have an increase on a customer service call center in some cities of the country, Bogotá, Bucaramanga, and Medellin. And we talked with the chairman of Telefonica, and we agreed that his plan is going to have a new activity located in Quibdó, because a call center would be located, everywhere if there is a proper logistic facilities. And Sena trained the people, and this call center is now the largest employer in Quibdó. This is an example of the ideas we could do in the post-conflict to create 150 jobs, formal jobs in Quibdó. Perhaps should modify the profile of the labor activity in Quibdó. In 150 jobs in Bogotá or in Bucaramanga, means nothing. So the question is where to have new economic activities, not the economic activities, but where to have these economic activities. And the tax incentives are a very good tool in order to have this possibility. The last question.
Let's see, there was one about the role of the armed forces in the post-conflict.
This is the most complex one.
Mm.
We have here the general and the former Minister of Defense to answer this question. Please. No, Ambassador.
The next conference. The good idea. Actually, good idea. Good idea. Good idea. If anybody wants to address this, I'd be happy to help translate. If you want to do it in Spanish, por favor.
Minister, Ambassador. Thank you very much. I am General Asprilla, Colombia Defense Attaché. I have been here for at least 9 months, and I have been following since I was a former Colombia Army Chief Commander, and here in the United States, what had been happening in Colombia. In Colombia, have been happening a transformation based on a victory, a holistic victory of the government and military forces and national police. And we look forward in terms of transformation to continue to give our country the security and the safety that the population needs to implement the peace accords. Actually, national police, military forces, and particularly the army, has a really great and deep transformation plan based on what has been happening and what we have been learned from other countries in the past, other peace process. Colombia create an own model of this peace process, an own model of this special transition justice, and based on the experience of other countries and related with international law and national law and the Constitution. So we are working hard, really, to sustain the security and to give the Colombian people what they need for the future. When we see this picture, we think about the main compromise that we have. These children is our compromise, the future of Colombia, and we have to let the next generation a better Colombia. And we are working together. We learn to work as a team in the military. We work, coordinate jointly. Now we are looking forward to work combined with other countries to export to other countries what we have learned in the past. And we as the government and military forces has been confirmed a team, and I think and we hope if the peace agreement, the final peace agreement is signed, we will make all the efforts to give to the Colombia the peace that everybody has been a dream.
Mejor el que yo.
Better than me. My gosh, we are almost out of time. I don't want to abuse Minister Pardo's schedule.
Yeah, I have the Secretary General of the OAS. 10:50.
Okay, let's take two more questions. This is really very difficult. Ambassador Ryshinsky and this person here, yeah. Microphone over there.
Thank you very much, Minister Pardo. You indicated in your remarks that narco-trafficking and criminal activity associated with narcotics cultivation will be an area that will be addressed in this plan. Do you see Colombia coming forward now with very, very focused plans to incentivize those in rural areas who grow coca as a means of economic survival, shifting into alternative development strategies, which we've heard discussed and seen approaches over the course of the last 20 years, but it strikes me that the absence of conflict can hopefully be an incentive for people who are cultivators of coca to come forward and end that cultivation and move into other crops. What plans specifically does the government have to do this on a more massive scale, perhaps, than what we've seen in the past?
Okay, that's Ambassador Guillermo Ryshinsky, former Canadian ambassador to Colombia, among his many other diplomatic achievements. Last one over here, por favor.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's really cold here.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
It is.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I would like to have this presentation.
We'll try to get this up on our website. So with your permission, we'll
Thank
put
you.
it up on the website.
And my question is about
your name, please. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. My name is Blanca Betancourt. I'm a Spanish teacher for Department of Defense members and diplomat members. So I'm working currently for Cape Fox Federal Integrators. And my question is about the 1,000 of ex-guerrilla members who are going to be in those 23 camps, I think is going to be temporary camps for them, but it's a lot of people who is going to have a big change in their lives. How, which organizations or what is the strategy of the government in order to prepare these people in order to be part of the society again? So it's the only question I have. Thank you.
Two big questions. We'll try to answer them briefly in the interest of time. Por favor.
Yeah, the first one, Ambassador. I expected nobody would raise the issue of coca, but
You
in the additional questions appears. So we are very. I mean, we have a high concern of the increase of coca cultivation in Colombia in the last 2 or 3 years. We have a continuous increase in the area, not in the same proportion as an increase in the number of persons dedicated to cultivate the coca crops. So this shows that the new area under cultivation is mainly an expansion of the existing areas. We are working on a strategy based on three different activities. One is to operate in the national parks. There are 16 national parks that have more than 12 to 15% of the coca crops in the country, because national parks are areas where, for ever was prohibited to use aerial spraying. So many of the, most of the expansion of the coca crops went to the national parks and to the some special areas where aerial spraying was not allowed. So this is the first topic in which we are working on, to work on the national parks. The second was to focus on 4 specific areas. We could call it endemic areas of coca cultivation. Endemic because there are an expansion of the area of cultivation, and these areas have had coca for many years. So there are no new areas, but areas consolidating the cultivation of coca. The worst municipality in this activity is Tumaco. Tumaco is in the border of Ecuador, have now 17% of the crops in the country. The area of coca in Tumaco is similar to the area of coca in Bolivia. So it's not a small problem. And we will have the strategy to operate in those 4 areas. One is Tumaco, in a integrated strategy that includes programs of substitution if the community agrees with no ¿cómo se dice resiembra?
If the community agrees not to replant.
Not to replant in a community-based agreement. Second, eradication, forced eradication, not by aerial means. And third one, to reinforce the activity of interdiction in the region, not only in the sea but in the region. To affect the mid level of the chain of the buyers of coca paste, not the peasants who planted, but the buyers of and the processors of the coca. We have four areas under this strategy. Those areas includes 35% of the coca cultivation plus the national parks. And the new initiative is a pilot project with FARC in one municipality in North Antioquia. The name of the municipality is Briseño, in which the government and FARC in Havana agreed to have a pilot project in order to learn from the escalation of the conflict and the implementation of the peace agreement related to coca, to substitution of illegal crops. Within 2 months, we will have results from this pilot project, and we have some expectation, realistic expectations from this pilot project, because FARC has been the main obstacle for substitution and for eradication. I mean, all over the years of coca planting in Colombia, and now FARC is going to be in a different position, not eradicating themselves the coca plants, but in a position in which they are not being in the future and now an obstacle for this process. So we will have the results in 2 months, and we will say if it worked or not, and what worked and what is not working, and for expand this pilot to other areas of the country. In reference to the demobilization, the DDR, demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration, is a process in which I mean, my office do not have responsibilities, but I know what is happening, so I'm going to try to answer these questions. Colombia have a very long and important experience in reintegration of persons coming from illegal activities. The Agencia Colombiana de Reintegración have had programs that shown that what kind of programs work and what programs do not work, and more than 50,000 Colombians have entered in those programs. So this is a big experience. We are not learning from zero in this experience. We know, I mean, the Agencia Colombiana de Reintegración have the experience to apply this experience to the people of FARC, who is going to demobilize in the next 6 months. This specifically, what the members of FARC are going to do, so far is not known, because it's under discussion in the last topic of negotiation in Havana. FARC would prefer collective activities, associated activities, not individual activities, and I mean, the role of the government is going to support that this reintegration would be successful. This is the general idea, but this is not, I cannot give you a precise idea of what the members of FARC are going to do, because this is a topic that is not already closed in Havana.
Great. Far be it from us to keep Secretary Almagro waiting.
Yeah.
Please join me in
Thank you.
thanking Rafael Pardo for this outstanding